Yo, hey everybody. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about tubeless tires, but primarily road tubeless. And is road tubeless worth it? I guess there's kind of a different reality from what I think most people think as far as in the general world or the internet world of what the best setup tire wise is. I see tons of videos about how great road tubeless is, and better rolling resistance, no flat tires, it's perfect, it's the greatest thing ever, yada yada yada. But then on the flip side, there's my reality of what I see pretty much on a daily basis, which is, I would say on average maybe 2 or 3 or more folks coming in, and they, whatever reason, their road tubeless is road, maybe some narrower gravel stuff, and then even some mountain bike stuff, but primarily it's kind of that the higher pressures of road or a narrower gravel setup. That's where you're going to see most of your typical issues. So anyway, what I mean by is road tubeless worth it? Is it worth the hassle? Is it worth the upkeep? And yeah, there's quite a bit of upkeep in really any tubeless setup. But anyway, some of the pros of road tubeless is that tubeless is basically your flat tires are eliminated. You can run lower tire pressures. The rolling resistance is better. Everything is great. Anyway, kind of some of the cons that the issues that I see on a daily basis are just, they won't seal, the holes, if a hole's too big or whatever, they just can't get it set up in the first place, things like that. Tubeless sealant is messy. I can show you all my clothes. I deal with tubeless tires every single day, and it's messy around the shop. It's messy on the bike when they leak sealant and spray it all over the place, or it gets on your clothes. But we're kind of just weighing things out here. But so anyway, I'm not trying to talk anybody out of doing, if that's the direction they want to go. There are alternatives that I think a lot of people aren't really aware of. But anyway, if you choose to run road tubeless and you're just you're locked into it, you're going to do it regardless of what. I've got a few tips and tricks and things, I guess you could say, or I'm gonna tell you from what I see on a daily basis, what the biggest causes of failure are, which are really just little things that are more of a attention to detail on getting things set up or upkeep, I guess you could say. So anyway, let's just jump right into it. So the top failures that I see in road tubeless, the number one thing I see when a bike comes in, this is mountain, road, gravel, whatever, number one thing I see is, somebody brings it in and say, yeah, my tires aren't holding air anymore. And it's generally they haven't topped off the sealant. Like, oh, well, I had it done a year ago and now it's not holding air, and you pop the tire off and look inside, and lo and behold, it's the sealant's all dried out. So if there's not, that's the thing with tires, they are semi-porous. So if that inside of that tire isn't coated all the time, or you get a decent sized puncture, there's just nothing there to seal it up if the sealant's all dried up. So that's the number one thing, is to check your sealant. If you don't have a compressor, it's a little more difficult, but really the best way to do it is to crack the side of the bead open. The tire is totally dry, or the sealant's really old, it has a hard time sealing anything up. You want it to be in more of a liquid state like this in order to seal up holes. That's number one problem I see. Anyway, that's number one, lack of sealant. Number two would be a poor tape job or a damaged tape job. And this typically happens either there's not enough overlap or the tape is not wide enough. You know, if you measure your tire or your, let's say you're measuring a rim and it says, you know, like the internal width is, you know, 21 or 23 or whatever, that's not the size tape you're going to use, because, you know, your rim kind of goes across, and then it usually has an under, you know, like a middle channel that dips down and then goes back straight across. So your tape generally needs to cover that side plate, but then also account for that inner part. So, you know, ideally you want that tape to go all the way to the side of the you know, the side wall of your rim, where you've got, you know, your hook portion there where the tire hooks into it. You know, so like here's where your tire is. That tape needs to go all the way to the side, and needs the tire bead needs to rest partially on that tape. If it's under here, it's too narrow. I guarantee you at some point that the air pressure and sealant is going to find its way underneath the tape. It just never fails. That typically will happen. So, you know, if the tape is done in a poor way, you know, it's too narrow, or it's just, you know, scooted over, it's not thick enough, wasn't clean enough, whatever, or, you know, some rim tire combinations are pretty wacky. Some are really tight, some are looser, and, you know, I see a ton of rims or tape jobs that have gotten damaged by wedging, you know, prying on with tire tools, and it gouges that tape. And if it's gouged in a spot that's beyond where the tire rests on it, you know, the sealant's gonna work its way in there as well. You know, kind of goes hand in hand with damage to the rim. You know, sometimes you get a big flat spot, and it can deform the rim enough to, you know, the existing tape maybe creates like a little bit of a fold in it and allows sealant to get to one of the spoke holes. And, you know, same thing, once you get air and sealant going into under the tape and into one of the spoke holes, it's, you know, it's going to leak. It's not going to hold air correctly, no matter how much sealant you put in it or whatever. So third thing is valves. So I have this one, you know, I kind of started this video and started filming this wheel that was chronically leaking. And so, you know, I've checked everything, you know, and usually what I'll do is I'll inflate, you know, we get one that's like a chronic slow leak, or what I'll do is inflate it, take it to my bike wash where there's some soapy water always, and I'll just cover the wheel and tire assembly, and it's pretty apparent right then what, you know, if it's leaking from the tire or the rim or whatever. If you see it leaking from around the valve stem or the spoke, you know, this anywhere around the spokes, the nipples or nipple to spoke interface, it's either getting into air and fluid is getting into the rim either through the valve stem or the tape. So that pretty much you can pinpoint one of those two and pull the tire off, and usually you can identify it from there. So but anyway, the valve stem, there's different rim contours. Like some of the DT rims, they have a very kind of U-shaped groove, and the valves just don't, if you use like a cone-shaped stands type valve, it just does not fit in there correctly. You got to use one, which I like using the just as far as the general all-in-one valve, or the muck-off valves work pretty well. They'll work with cush corks. They've got the little grooves on the top side of the valve where you can use also you can switch out the rubber pieces. You know, they give you 3 different pieces to fit different contours of different rims. So, you know, typically you know, some of them you got to have kind of a U groove shaped valve, and some of them the cone works, and, you know, there's other things. The fourth one is either, you know, some kind of damage to the tire, either a cut or large puncture or something like that. You know, and that's kind of another downfall of road tubeless is, you know, I've had some where there's mediocre size holes that aren't anything, you know, on a mountain bike it's no big deal at all, you know, because the pressure is a lot lower. But on a road bike with that higher, you know, if you're running like a 25C road tire, you still got to run a substantial amount of pressure. You're just going to bottom that thing out on the rim anytime you hit a, something weird in the road, a crack or expansion joint or small hole or rock or whatever. You don't want to be cracking your carbon rim or dinging your aluminum rim because it's bottoming out so hard. Anyway, though, some of those holes, when you have a higher pressure, the sealant just can't seal it up. So I've had to replace tons of them. You can put a plug in it, you can patch it from the inside, but we don't really, those are things you can do on your own. Plug it if you're out on the road, but just as a shop, it's just something you can't really guarantee that's going to be a long-term fix. It's a short-term fix, get you home kind of thing, and if you want to, as a home mechanic, patch it or plug it or whatever, and hopefully it gets you through however much longer. But so kind of the last thing I want to talk about are some of the myths of tubeless myths that I hear. I don't know where they came from, or I see them going around, but myth number one is that you have to clear all the old, if you're flushing the sealant, putting new sealant in, you got to pull the tire off, clean out all the old sealant, and then put it back on, put new sealant on, and you're good to go. And I don't really know where that came from. Most of the time that's not the case. If you have a tubeless tire that set up, you're riding it, and then you put it aside and it sits there for a year or a really long time basically, and it just sits in one spot, that sealant will coagulate and just kind of thicken up in this little strip on the bottom. It's kind of a little round weird oval strip thing that if you put sealant in later and try to ride it, the thing from that big blob that was of sealant that stuck down at the bottom, you'll feel it it's the wheel spinning. So that definitely you would need to scrape it out or peel it out or whatever. You don't necessarily have to take the whole tire off, maybe half the bead, and you can pull it off. But if you're riding regularly, you don't even have to look inside, just top the sealant off every so often. If your bike isn't, you're not riding it over the long winter, here in Colorado, we're looking 5-6 months, sometimes winter, and guys are just, whatever, riding fat bikes or something else, or, your primary A bike may be just sitting for a while. So if that's the case, if your bike's going to be sitting over the winter for a long while, or you're on vacation or just whatever, I guess if you're on vacation, you can't really do this. But if your bike's sitting there, you're not riding it, you're around it, spin the wheels occasionally, and just let that sealant kind of keep some movement going on in there. Maybe every week or two, just spin the tire around. That'll prevent that situation. Kind of last thing, myth number 2 that I hear a lot of is guys trying to set up a tubeless configuration on non-tubeless, just a standard old school tire or rim or whatever, and you're going to hear guys swear that it works. I've done it fine, but I strongly recommend not doing it. I've seen way too many of those things, they'll come unseated super easily, and you gotta be, you put a little too much air pressure and boom, pops right off the rim, as opposed to that's the exact same setup with an inner tube in there. So, if you are a road rider and you're just wanting the benefits of tubeless without all the, you're looking for just the flat protection. You don't care about running low tire pressures. Most modern day tubes have removable valve cores, and you can put tubeless sealant right in the tube, and that works just as well as far as sealing up, goat head thorns or little punctures and stuff like that. So, anyway, hopefully you found the video interesting or insightful or helpful, and see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.